What if you like your application to run on iPhone and iPad at the same time? There are a number of things you can do. You could just leave it the way it is, and on an iPad your application will appear like a small window, like an iPhone with an iPad, and it'll just work. But iPad has a bigger surface area, screen area, and you want to utilize it. There are different controls for iPad also, like list detail view. So you may want to have two different views. When they run on iPhone it looks like one, and when you run on iPad it looks a different way. So in that case you want two different nib files, one for iPhone, one for iPad. Now there are different scenarios in it. First is when you're starting a new project, you can select and it'll give you more than one. You may want to decide, you may have an application and then later on you decide to add. Then what do you do? And the third one is you already started, as I said, the first option, and you want to add a new nib file. Then what do you do? So let's look at all of those scenarios. So let's say you are starting out with a brand new project. Let's say you want to go start off with a single view application, so at the very beginning you get a single app, one view. You could start with an empty application also, but let's see that, and it'll give us some hints that we can follow. Let's call it multi-view now. Right here in devices you can select iPad, iPhone, or universal. So let's select universal. That's trick number one. When I do that, let's see what it'll do for me. It'll give me a project, and as before I'll give a view but two copies of it. View controller underscore one for iPhone and one for iPad. And if you look in app delegate, you will see a little line. It is testing which device are you running your application on. If it's UI user interface idiom phone, then you load this nib file, or you load the other nib file for the iPad. Basically, and if it's not the iPhone, then it must be the iPad. There are only two things in the world of Apple. Now what if you, the second option is, what if you want to add a new nib file? Then what do you do? Well, that's a little tricky now. First of all, of course, I want to add a new nib file, and we start off by add a new file, user interface view. For iPhone or iPad, you see there is no universal here this time, so now it gets tricky. What are you gonna do? We come here, either iPhone or iPad, we do one of them. You see I've already made a mistake right there. How can I distinguish between the two? So I gotta get rid of it. Or let's just leave it and start by adding a new one. User interface view, next, for iPhone. And this time let's follow the same naming convention. I'm going to say view underscore iPhone, or view one underscore iPhone. Now here we got it. Now we can create another one called view underscore iPad. This time for iPad. See, iPhone zip and an iPad. There is no M file associated with it, so now we gotta add it and connect both of these to it. Objective-C class, view one. You see how the naming convention was over here? View controller underscore iPhone underscore iPad are connected to view controller.m. So view one underscore iPhone, view one underscore iPad, it'll be connected to a UI view controller class called view one before the underscore. Now I already have the zip, so I won't do that. Uncheck that. So now I got view one file. Now that's confusing a little bit, so let's just get rid of it. Well, so they're in different folders, so we want to put them in the same together at least. Yeah, so let's drag them out. Yeah, you see they aren't appearing together, but we gotta come here and file owner. One of these options will allow us to hook it up. So here's what we do. I come here, click on the file, click on the file's owner and change it to view one. Go to the other one, file's owner, change it to view one. So now both of these are connected to this one. If you look at this one, file owner is connected to view controller. These two are connected to this one. These two are connected to this one now. And that's the trick. The trick is in the file owner. Now both of these are... Now there's another way. The other way is I go new file. Now this time instead of user interface view, I go to Cocoa Touch Objective-C class next, and I go with view controller. Let's call it view controller view 2 UI view controller targeted for iPad with zip for user interface, and click next. Let's see what that'll do for us. Well, it created a view2.zip file. It's connected to view2, but it didn't make two of them. Now I have to add one more. Actually, I have to rename it. And the way I rename a file is double click slowly. And this was for iPad, right? I clicked iPad. Now I have to add another one. File, new file. The other one would be a view type, the nib file. Click next, and that I want the one for the iPhone, and I want to call it view2 iPhone. After I do that, I gotta come to the file owner, connect it to view2. Is there a view2? The view 2 isn't showing up on the list for some reason. I'm not sure why is that. Yeah, that's connected to view 2. Connected to view 2. There may be a bug in here or something that it doesn't show up on the list. Does view 1 show up? The view 1 does show up. Maybe the project needs to be refreshed or something, but something to a caveat. So I went the other way. Now which of these two to load? As you saw in app-delegate.m file, gotta need this kind of if statement to load one or the other. And of course that'll be done from whichever file is going to fire up view 2 is going to have to do that. By that I mean that let's say there was a button here which says, go to view 2. The click event of that button would have, I could just copy and paste it here and change this view controller iPhone to view 2 underscore iPhone or view 2 underscore iPad. Now third scenario is that I already have a project, multi-view, as I was working on. Now I decide I'm going to start supporting, for the view 6, I need another one. Well, I gotta follow one of those three techniques that I did before. I already have a view 6.zip file, so I want to add another zip file and connect it to view 6, like so. New file, user interface, view. The view 6 currently that I had was for iPhone, so now I want for the iPad. I know in my head view 6 underscore iPad create, and of course gonna come to the view connected to view 6, because if you look at view 6, nib is connected to view 6, view 6 underscore iPad is connected to view 6. Now to make it more clear, I of course want to rename it. Double click slowly and call this iPhone. Now that I've done that, I've renamed it. So anywhere I call view 6, I'm gonna have to put in the if statement that I have. If it's iPad, load one of these or the other one. For example, right here. See how I'm loading the view 6? So I'm gonna have to go to the other, copy this command, come back to my multi-view, paste that command in here, and change this line to view 6, change this line to view 6, and this to view 6 iPhone, view 6 iPad, and I'm going to remark this out. No, sorry, we're going to do something like this. These lines of command, either this nib or the iPad nib. We're going to run this out because we moved it here. We replaced this line with this if else statement, loading either nib or the other. That's the only change that needs to be made. When I click on run, I see the application, the iPhone application. Now if I was to change the simulator to iPad 6.1 and rerun it, I need to close it, stop it. Now if I was to change the simulator to iPad and I run it, a breakpoint right there, it should be able to detect, right? I'm not run see, but still it's the simulator isn't kicking in, so I'll have to test. That's one of the another caveat. I'll have to put it on the iPad to actually test it, because it's certainly changing the simulator doesn't do anything for me. You see, still the iPad, even though iPad, but small application, iPhone application within the big application, as I said in the beginning. But here we have many different ways of adding iPhone, iPad applications. Supporting iPhone and iPad devices in your application. The workaround in this simulator, it shows us the iPad, and if I do iPad simulator, it does show the iPhone. I'm gonna have to, fudge it and load the iPad, that one. Do that, I get an error. Let's look at it again and see how to fix it. There you go, I got an error. It says that view 6 underscore iPad nib, but the view outlet is not set, so I missed one step. I'm gonna have to go back in here, click here. I took care of the file's owner by putting view 6 in here. The next step was, in each one of the cases that I discussed before, missed this step. Gonna come in here and drag this over to the view. I think that's what it is, because if you look at here, see how this referencing outlet, and if I go to this one, the referencing outlet wasn't set, so that dragging that I did hopefully will fix it. App delegate M, let's see if that'll do the job. Step over it, yes, and it is loading it up now. View 6 underscore iPad view. So here we go. Now we are all set. Got all the details down.